Hey guys, this is Ankit Prajapati. Welcome to my channel SLT Learning, and today we're gonna cover about the Java questions, right? So from this part six, we're gonna cover few of the Java questions. So it will be around part eight or nine. Then we're gonna try to cover around 35 questions on Java. This is mainly I have filtered out the questions like for the people who are applying for QA automation at beginner level or experience level, right? So sometimes we know like what kind of the questions they're gonna ask and what kind of the things we need to know about Java or programming before applying to the automation role. So first of all, I will just say each and every technical job will start with the oops concept, right? So just make sure you clear down your oops concept. I will create a separate video to explain the oops concept with practical examples as well. So just stay tuned with my channel, and if you like this video, just share, subscribe, and follow my channels. Okay, so let's we start with the initial questions that we have in Java. It's like what is class and object, then what is method overloading and overriding, what is abstractions, where we gonna use the abstraction in automation. So sometimes they will ask you this oops concept with respect to your framework. Okay guys, so make sure if you answer right, try to relate with your framework somewhere you have used, or if you can google these things like oops concept with automation framework, you will definitely get some example, and over here I will also talk about those example. Okay, what is interface, what is difference between the HashMap and HashTable. They will definitely ask for the collections, because in automation framework we use collection on multiple things, because we want to locate the key value pair information in automation framework. So they will definitely ask you about what is Java collection and all those things. What is super keywords, final keywords to non-static static methods, what is exceptional, how to handle the exception, right? And the most common things they will ask you if you have know the exception, right? Because if you work on programming, right, you must have encountered some of the exception in your work, right? So over here, that is the one question that one of my candidate requested me to explain in a little bit brief way, like null pointer exception. So I have included in this particular video. Okay, so let's we start with the class, right? So as we all know the definition, and if you're applying for a job or if you're learning something, these two definition you definitely know, right? So any whenever we have a like we want to create a list of object, we have a set of class, right? So that is indirectly it's just a blueprint of a creating an object, like the common things that we have in an object, right? So I have given a couple of example on a screen, but if you see, if any programming, right, even in Java or anything, whenever you create any project, right, so the first things that you need to create is you need to create a class. So this is what we can call a class, and class contain everything, methods and variables and everything. But the first thing that we will come when we start programming, that is a class. Okay, so class is the blueprint of different object, and it contains different methods and everything. Whatever we wrote in a class. Okay guys, and what is object? So object is the instance of class, right? So if you want to use the property of that class, we normally require object. So this is, we can consider the instance of a class. Okay, and you can see the example of class and object, like animal and car example I have given. And if you see, for a different car or different animals, we have color, size, right? For animals we can see their speed of walking or speed of running and all those things. So based on that we define, and based on those characteristic we define the objects, right, for a different class. So this is called the characteristic or property of that object. Okay, the class will be on top, then we will have a different object, and each and every object will have certain properties which distribute, like I will just differentiate between the object. Why it is called Mercedes, why it is called BMW? Because of the design, look, the pricing, the capacity of their engine, fuel tank capacity, and all those things which will define their actual object related things. Okay, then we will have next questions. What is method overloading and method overriding? So this is something must ask questions, right? At the initial level as well, even though if you're applying for a Java developer, they will definitely ask these questions. So overloading, first understand overloading, because these two terms always confuse the candidate, right? So overloading means you will have a method with the same name, right? But the parameter of the method will be different, right? Let's suppose I want to create one method called a size, right? Size of, I will just say size of, I will just say, or sorry, the area of I will just object, right? Triangle, square, or pentagon, or something like that way. Because if I want to find a area of circle, right, I need to pass the different parameter, right? So this is way, when your method, like you will have multiple method with the same name, but the parameter will be different, right? That is called method overloading. Okay, method is overloaded with a different set of parameters. So first method, let's suppose if I open the paint, right, if I just says, I'm not sure about the exact calculation. Okay, method overloading. So let's suppose my first method, it just says uh, public void area of circle, right? So I have to pass only radiation, right? So this is my one first method for area. Now I have for the square, right? So I will just say public void area for square. I need to pass l- length and height, right? So you see the name of the method is remains similar, right? But just the parameter we are going to change. So this is called the best example of method overloading. Okay, where we have a similar name of method but the different parameters. While the first difference we can kind, this is method overloading, but in a method overriding, what will happen? We have a same name and a same list of parameters, but they are defined in a different class. This is in a same class. This is in a same class, in one class. But in a method overloading, the parameter will be remain the same, method name will be remain the same, but that will be on a different class. Okay, so that is the one difference for method overloading and method overriding. So I have put it that things over here, right? So in a method overloading, the relationship that will show between the methods are from the same class. Where in a method overriding, right, that is one of the concept that normally we used for a super and subclass, right? So we have a same method with the same name, but the I will just say is the initialization of that method will be different. The content in the method will be different. So suppose in a super class the method is performing certain activity, but the same method in a subclass is performing something different. Okay, so that is called the method overriding, like override the permission, right? So if you know the user and group permission, right? So initial we have a team level of permission, right? Let's suppose we are a developer, so we all have given a certain permission to access the office door, right? Then few of the developer at the user level, they have special permission, right? So they can enter to the server room as well. So always user level permission override the team level permission. So when you have a same method at a child and same method at a parent, then it gonna be get overridden by the child one. Okay, so that is called method overriding. Method overriding, also called runtime polymorphism, guys. It is dynamic and it always occur at the runtime. So that is the reason it is called runtime polymorphism. What is polymorphism? Polymorphism means one method with the different one name of the one form which will I will just say serve the different purpose. Okay, that is called polymorphism, right? So one name, like one name of the method, we are performing the different actions. That is a part of the polymorphism. Method overloading is the compile time polymorphism. It is static binding. It is called the compile time polymorphism as well. Okay. In method overloading, the parameter must be different. One, two, three. The same parameter cannot be occur. Otherwise, it will become method overriding. Okay. But in a method overriding, the parameter could be different for both class, super and subclass. Example of method overloading, if you know the automation, right? Implicit wait we use, that is the best example of method overloading. Because when you apply the implicit weight, right, in a parameter, you normally pass the seconds or minutes or hours as well, right? So it allow you to pass the different set of parameters when you use the implicit weight. Where method overriding, that we have a web driver interface. In web driver interface we have two method, driver dot get and driver dot navigate, that too, right? So this two method is the best example of overriding because they serve the same purpose, right? They serve the same purpose to redirect to the URL. Okay, So if they will ask you what is method overloading and method overriding, just tell 3 points and one example from the automation side, that will give you the good marks. Okay. Then we will have a concept of abstraction, and we all know, right, at the initial level the abstraction is one of those concept which normally hide the implementation of internal detail and the implementation of the actual logic from the end user, right, and it only show the required functionality. So the best example we know, ATM machine, then our mobile phone. Because in our mobile phone, when somebody is calling us, right, there are many things happening at the back side, but on UI, on a front side, it only shows either you can accept or reject. So when you hide the implementation of business logic, right, and just show the required information, that is called abstraction. You are abstracting the method from the end user. Okay. So in automation framework we have two examples, right, the form page object model, the design pattern we use, where we, for each and every page, we abstract the detail like locators and method of that particular page separate, right. We do not disclose the login methods to the registration page or registration method to the payment page and all those things. So that is one of the best example you can just say in automation framework, that is page object model. The next thing will be the base class and action class we normally create, right. So it's depend on your framework. If you're working with the hybrid framework, right, then we define few of the private method to achieve one public method, right. So in my framework, we normally, when we create something, let's suppose we want to create a button, right, perform click on button. So before making that click event publicly, we always have couple of private method, like if button is displayed or not, if button is clickable or not. So these two private method will come under the public method. Okay. So how it is gonna be work? So like this is what we normally follow, right. So suppose we have standard, right, so public click on login button. So this is my one of the method that I want to include in my particular action class, right. So before this one, right, before making this public method, right, to use, I have couple of private methods. So what I will just say is, I will just say is all the method over here, uh, login, sorry, just hold on. Login button display. It's login button display, it will return true or false. Okay. Then login button clickable, right. So these are the two methods. Then perform login click, right. So these two methods, right, will which will be the separate, these two methods which will be the separate, right, and it will be have like something like that way, private login button display, right. So this is my private method in the same class, but I will make it private because I do not want to put the logic. So over here, whatever I will write the weight condition and explicit weight and implicit weight, everything I will write the weight condition, weight till the login button is visible. So those logic I will put it over here, but this is private. Okay. So no one in my framework can access this method directly. They can only see click on login button. So when they perform click on login button, this too will happen automatically. So the, like the exception that will not come to the user, it will check first display or not, wait for a time, then it will check the explicit weight, if it is clickable or not, wait for a time, and then perform the action. So those kind of weights and logic we normally put in private method, and we will make only this method available for the tester to use in a automation framework. Okay. So this is one of the best example of abstraction. You can also explain like this way to get a good marks. Okay. Perfect. So let's we go to the next questions. That is, what is interface, guys? So interface is almost similar to the class. It is a blueprint of class. Okay. So it will define, right? It will define certain rules and regulation for a class, right? If you want to create a class, this is the basic things you need to do. Okay. So similar like the loan process, right? So RBI have set up some loan process. If somebody need a home loan, they need to provide these three documents. Let's suppose Aadhaar card, PAN card, and the ITR fill up for last 3 years. So this is the interface RBI has created. Now any bank, HDFC, Kotak, or any bank wants to give the loan to their customer, they have to ask these three, right? They can add more based on their strategy or based on their policy, but this is three, that is interface given by RBI. You have to ask these three things to the customer. Okay, now HDFC says, okay, apart from these three, we also need address proof, we also need XYZ, we also need falana or something like that way. So that is the HDFC policy, but these three things, the interface has been created by RBI. Okay, always make sure. So this is the best example of interface, right, which will share the blueprint of the class. So these are the behavior of the property you must require to implement those things. Okay, so in a automation we have a web driver, we all know, right, that is one kind of interface. And in a web driver we can normally call the object driver, and we can use the different methods like get method, quit methods, close method, get a text, get a title, because those are the things that it is already in the, I will just say, in the class for the web driver. Okay, so web driver is an interface that contain different class, like for getting a text, getting a title, like these are the different method it is contained. Okay, so you can give an example like this way. The next question will be on the Java collection. They will ask you, do you know the Java collection? What is Java? I will create a separate video between Java collection, array, a difference, and all those things. The next list of question will contain definitely that part. I have included these things because this is what asked for the one of the candidate, right? So what is HashMap and HashTable, guys? So if when you are learning something, right, mostly on technical side, always make sure answer will have many questions, right? So I'm just going to discuss about the difference between the HashMap and HashTable. So first of all, the collection we all know, right? They work on key value pair. So we will have a key and we will have a value. So key value pair always work for the collections. So the hash map is a non-synchronized and not a thread safe. So now the question will come, what is synchronization and what is thread safe and all those things. So this is the things I'm going to create a separate video in the next part of list of questions. I will include this one. So what is synchronization, right? So means how the synchronization work, how the multiple threads can access the same object at a time. So those are the concept will depend on synchronization and thread safe. So for a basic understanding, hash map is not synchronized and it is not thread safe. Where the hash table is a synchronized and a thread safe. Okay, this is what. Then you can always just say hash map is bit fast, right? Because it is a non-synchronized, and hash table is little bit slow because it is a synchronized. Okay, in a hash table we can share the object with the multiple threads, right? But in a hash map we cannot share the object with the multiple thread. Okay, then in a hash map we allow one null key and multiple null values, where in a hash table we do not allow any null key or any null values. So this is the key difference. Has map traverse, right, from start to end in a based on the iterator, where the hash table traverse based on the emulator and iterator, right? So now the question will come, what is emulator and what is iterator. So that is a part of the self learning. You can try to expose those keywords for your learning, but in my next video, if you required, I can make the separate video for those one as well. Okay, so if somebody asks you what is the difference between hash map and hash table, three out of these five is more than enough, but always speak about the second one and the first one, about non-synchronized and synchronized, and allow one null key and multiple null value, does not allow any null key or any null value. Okay, so this is called a hash map and hash table, guys. The next things will be the what is super keyword, right? So super keyword something, it's, I will just say super means always refer to the super class, means parent class, right? It used to call the super class method and construction by default. So normally in automation, right, when we will have a test ng before class annotations, where we create a base class, right? So in a base class we will have a we will have a method to initialize the web browser, to initialize the property, to read the property from config file. So those things are a part of the super keyword, right? In a page class, when we extend the base class, we normally call this super keyword. So it will automatically initialize the browser property and the config file property to access the web driver, to access the URL or any important information we have put in a config file. So property things we will get access. So this is one of the example you can say about the super keyword. Super keyword normally we used to avoid the confusion about the, I will just say, method overriding. Okay, So when you use the super keyword, they know if you have a same method name in a same super class or subclass, it will take the method from the super class itself. Okay, so that is the use of the super keyword, guys, to call the constructor or method from the super class by default. You just mention the super keyword, it will automatically call those method, right, to access the property, to initialize the browser and other property in automation framework. Okay, so this is test engine before class is one of the best example to include the super keyword, guys. Then we will have a final keyword, right? So what final keyword do? So final keyword is the non-access modifier. So what is modifier? Which allow to modify or not to the different property of the oops, like class, method or variable. I will make a separate video on modifier because that is one of the good concept to be know when you are applying for the automation and when you are jumping to the technical side. So what is non-access modifier? So sorry, the final keyword is the non-access modifier, which is used for class, method and variable. Final keywords means, as name suggests, right, when you make something final, you cannot change, right? So when you want to make your variable as a final, so the nobody can change the value. When you want to make your class as a final, so nobody can override. When you want to make your method as a final, so nobody can inherit that method, or method overriding, or method so that is the use of the final keyword, right? So final keyword we normally use in our automation framework. Sometimes we have some variables or property that we do not allow anybody to change, like a base URL, right? Because the base URL will always remain the same. The initialization method, right? How we gonna initialize the browser property and the browser driver and all those things. We do not want anybody to change. So in a base class, when we provide this information, we make it them final, so nobody can make any change on those method or variables. Okay, guys. So final keyword help us to stop the value change, stop the method overriding, and stop to do the inheritance from one class to another class when you define that variable, class or method as a final. Okay. Then what is static and non-static method? So first of all, when you want to create a static method, right, we have to use the static keyword in front of the method name. Other side, all other method that we are creating normally default, that are the non-static method. Okay, static method is a class method which belong to the class itself. You cannot access outside of the class. Where the non-static method is the instance of method, it's belong to the each object of the generated from the one class or another class. Okay, so you can use in another class as well. Static method can only access static data member and static method from the another class, where non-static method can access the static data member and the non-static data member as well. Okay, static method is used compile time binding, non-static method use runtime binding. Static method normally consume the least memory, and non-static normally consume the more memory. So 3 out of 5 example is more than enough. So if you know the public static void main, right, our first main method we will have static. That means we can only use the static method over there. Okay. So understand this concept, guys. This they will definitely ask you this question: what is static and non-static method? If you have any questions, you can put in the comment as well. Okay. Then we will have the exceptional handling. What is exception and how you going to handle that? So exception is nothing, it's just an error or abnormal condition that has been followed because of the coding error by the developer or something like that, right? So in Java we will handle the exception by using the try catch mechanism, right? So we all know how to use try catch, right? If you not aware about the try catch, let me just tell you few are the exceptions that we have. The checked exception, unchecked exception, right? So input output exception normally called the checked exception. Unchecked means arithmetic, null pointer, array, out of box, out of bound. That is, those kind of exceptions fall under the unchecked exception list. So those are the two types of the exceptions. Okay, guys. So now let me just show you how the try catch works, because I was just demonstrating this part to the one of my students. So this is the exception, right? So this is how the try catch block work, right? So under the try catch, you normally put your code which you think that gonna generate the exception. So if you think this line of code will have some risk or it may be fail, right? So those things you normally put it over here. So in case exception happen, the catch will be catch that exception. Okay, and rest of the code you normally put over here. So if I run this particular code, right, you see this is the error, right? This is the arithmetic exception we normally get this example. So if you I go and run this particular things, right, I can see the arithmetic exception is happening because divide by 0 is not possible. Okay, so this is the reason it go over here, it print the exceptions, right, and then it just execute my rest of the code. Now, then another questions that we have in this list is null pointer exceptions, right? So as the name suggests, when you forgot or when you do not declare or assign any value to the variable, right, and you try to process it, right, at that time it will give you the null pointer exceptions, right? So example, in automation, sometimes you forgot to initialize the driver in a POM, right? If you are working with the page object model, so you have to go through your driver from one class to another class, and sometime you forgot to initialize that driver, it will give you the null pointer exception for the driver, right? Sometimes you forgot to initialize the value of any variable and you start using that variable in your script, in your automation script. At that time you will also get that particular exception. Okay, so these two things I'm going to highlight: forgot the driver in a prom matter, and forgot initialize the value of any variable. Okay, and you start using it. So for an example, right, let's suppose this is one of the example, right? So initially the string, like a base url or any string, I have defined as a null, and after null I'm not going to print it, I'm just want to find the length of that particular string. But as it is says it is null, that means no value is assigned to it, right? So if I run this one, if I run this code, it will give me the error Java null pointed exception, right? String length because as is null. Now suppose if I just says over here Ankit, right? And if I try to run this one, what will happen? Let's we see. So now code will go on this block and we try to print the 5. Length of Ankit word is 5. Right? So this is how the null pointer exception work. This is very common, guys. If you receive this exception, try to find out the variable or element where the null value is passing through in your code, and try to assign some value or try to see how you can generate the value for that specific one, and you can resolve this kind of exception in your code. Okay, so these are the list of questions that I was targeting to finish in this particular video. If you have any questions in Java, right, which you are struggling to answer in your automation interview, right, you can just put in your comment. I will definitely give you some practical answer on that one, right? And if you also feel on this video I can improve something, you can also put in your comment. But thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, just please share, subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.